Namaskar everybody, this is Meenakshi Narula and I welcome you to my channel Mentoring the Mentors. My dear educators, as we have been talking about various Pramanas as per Indian epistemology. So in today's video, we are going to discuss the Pratyakshya Praman, that is perception in detail. So without any further delay, here you go. So my dear educators, as you know, the Pratyakshya Pramana refers to the knowledge gained through direct sensory experience where the mind directly interacts with an object through the senses. When through our senses we directly perceive information, we directly see any object or any event, right? So maybe we observe, we feel, we touch through all our senses, then we consider it is Pratyaksh Praman. In Hindi, we usually say Pratyaksh ko Praman ki avashyakta nahi, right? Means when we say that I have seen it with my own eyes, I've heard with my own ears, most frequently we use such terms, such statements in our conversations, so that we want to stress on what we have seen, what is actually pratyaksh to us. So this is a kind of source of knowledge for us and is considered authentic too. So just have a look at this mind map that is there in front of you. Pratyaksha Praman, if we talk about definition, obviously it's a direct perception, knowledge gained through our senses, right? Our senses, our sense of sight, sense of hear, sense of smell, sense of touch, sense of hearing. So through our senses, whatever we get, we perceive, that is called Pratyaksha Praman, and it is considered the fundamental source of knowledge. And if you talk about the categories, basically it is external as well as internal. External, which is through our senses, and internal, which is through our mind. External, as I've told you, this is through our five senses: eyes, ear, nose, tongue, and skin. And when we talk about internal, it is the mental perception through mind, through memory, through intuition. Sometimes we memorize things and we bring the same from our memory, and sometimes we say that my sixth sense says it so, right? We sometimes have some kind of intuitions. I have that intuition like this is going to happen, so that is also considered under this Pratyaksha Praman. And if we talk about the importance of this kind of pramana in Indian philosophy, it is considered the most reliable. Now, why it is considered the most reliable? Because we can see it with our own eyes, and it forms the basis of other pramanas. That in the yesterday's video, we talked about the six pramanas. So we are discussing the Pratyaksh Praman today. So this Pratyaksh Praman, it makes the basis of rest of the pramanas. It is used in Nyaya, Vedanta, and other schools too. And talking about the limitations, obviously it is subject to illusion too. Everybody, you are familiar with the mirage effect, right? When we talk about the mirage effect, what exactly, when we feel like there is some water in the desert place, when we are going, maybe because of the reflection it is there, but we feel like there is some water, and your mirage is associated with deer. We keep on giving some example for that, right? So we consider like Pratyaksha Praman is subject to illusion. Sometimes we feel something is there, but actually it doesn't exist. So it can be deceptive in some cases. So varies among different individuals. Now, how come it varies among different individuals? If I see something, obviously, again, I would stress I have seen something with my own eyes, and somebody else has also seen the same event or the thing or whatever it is. So maybe I perceive, like generally we give an example, like there is a glass which is half full of water. I may see it is half full of water, and another person says it is half empty. So that depends upon person to person as well. So this was all about Pratyaksha Praman. Now, going further, my dear educators, we are going to talk about this thing in detail. Let's talk about the various types. First of all, we will be talking about nirvikalp and savikalp pratyaksha. Now, as even the name suggests, nirvikalp, where there is indeterminate perception, and savikalp has determinate perception. Now, how it happens is, when there is indeterminate perception, raw knowledge is there, is our initial experience is there, and there is no analysis or recognition, right? For example, a newborn baby, the child sees the bright object, but the child doesn't recognize the source. Where does it come from? Right? And even if I tell you, if I see some person going out of my room, I can see somebody is going out of my room, but I don't recognize who that person is. Means I have got knowledge, that is little knowledge, but I don't have complete knowledge who that person was. So this is considered the nirvikalp pratyaksha, that indeterminate perception. Now, coming to the next one, which is savikalpa pratyaksha, that is determinate perception. It is the determinate perception. It is processed and analyzed experience. Here, the object is recognized and understood. Means when you see a lamp, you get to know this is the actually source of light, right? We recognize the same. Or maybe if I see some person going out of my room, but I was able to recognize that person, so it means I have got Pratyaksha Praman, that is called Savikalp Pratyaksha Praman, right? So we have discussed about Nirvikalp and Savikalp. These are the two types of Pratyaksha Praman. Now talking about the process of knowledge formation. Knowledge is cognition, right? So it begins with the Nirvikalp. Nirvikalp, like undefined experience, and then it is followed by Savikalp, that is meaningful understanding. First, we get to know something, and then we try exploring something, and we slowly and gradually understand that. Means Nirvikalp is followed by cervical, and the mind processes the raw input into the structured knowledge. And where do we get the raw knowledge from? We get the raw input from the nirvikalpa, and when we process it, we understand it. That is known as cervikalpa pratyaksha praman. So I hope by now you have understood what is nirvikalpa and the cervikalpa pratyaksha praman. Now moving further, now, how do we perceive? How do we perceive? As I've already told you, we have got 5 senses: sense of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Through our senses, we perceive, and this is called external perception. And going further, talking about internal perception or internal cognition, it is mind, intellect, memory, and ego. Manas, buddhi, chit, ahankara, that is ego. Now, how do we do that? Like mind coordinates with the senses, right? What, for example, what we want to see, accordingly, the mind is connected with that, right? When we smell something, our mind wants to eat that particular thing. When we taste something, we like it, and our mind wants to have it more, right? So maybe we hear some melodious sounds through our ears, and our mind takes us to that very place. So mind, manas, coordinates with the senses, and accordingly we perceive that information. And then talking about buddhi or the intellect, it analyzes that information that we get through senses or maybe through our mind coordination. And then talking about chitta, that is a memory, it stores those impressions. And the next one is ego, ahankara, gives a sense of identity. Then again, I would like to stress on the process of understanding is senses collect the raw data. Raw data is being collected, and then mind processes that very input that is collected through the senses, and our intellect gives it a meaning. So this is the main process. You all should understand. Let us recapitulate once again. We receive the information, that is external perception, through our senses, and our mind processes that information that we receive, the raw data that we receive through our senses. The processing is done in mind, and then our intellect, that is buddhi, it gives it a meaning, which is further stored in chitta or memory, right? So this is actually the process of perceiving the information. Now, let's move ahead. Let's talk about a few examples of Pratyaksha Pramana in a daily life. We will be talking about all these 5 senses, starting with the visual perception, that is sense of sight. We see the sunrise every morning, knowing it is morning, and even when you start moving towards your job, your profession, I mean, whatever you are working with, your workplace. So when you go out, obviously you come across a lot of traffic, watching the traffic lights changing. That is there the visual perception. Not only this, obviously you come across many events, right? Many things happen. You see everything with your own eyes. These are just few examples of the visual perception. Talking about the tactile perception, just here I'm giving you one example: touching fire, realizing it is hot, so maybe feeling the softness, hardness, okay, roughness of any kind of thing through touch. We teach our students to various activities we conduct in our classes for teaching them what are the various senses do we have. Accordingly, auditory perception, maybe hearing the bell, recognizing the same, then mind processes this, recognizing it as a school bell, listening to the thunder, knowing the thunderstorm is coming, means how the information we perceive through our senses with the processing processing happens in the mind, and then recognition happens through the intellect. Now, talking about the gustatory perception, that is a sense of taste, tasting anything. It can be any food, fruit, or whatever it is. So we identify the sweetness or the sourness and recognize the same, what fruit or vegetable exactly it is. So this is how the information processes. Now, next is olfactory perception, smelling fresh coffee, recognizing it, detecting the scent of the flowers, etc. So recognizing that the food is stale because of the bad colors or maybe smell or odor. So this is how, these are the few examples of Pratyakshya Pramana in our daily life. So now let's talk about the limitation of Pratyakshya Pramana in detail. As I've already discussed with you in the first slide, we talked about the illusion or the optical errors. Maybe seeing a mirage, thinking there is a water, optical illusion tricks the eyes. There are various optical illusion images. They are there available on the net. We always come across such kinds of images on the social media too. So now let's talk about the sensory limitations. Senses do have limitations too, right? This doesn't mean whatever we see, whatever we smell, whatever we hear, that is only the world. World exists beyond that as well. We cannot see bacteria with the naked eye, right? Hearing range is limited for the human beings. We cannot perceive ultraviolet or the infrared light, right? And even let me tell you, for example, the sense of smell of cats, maybe sense of hearing of dogs, they are much more than the human beings. So we cannot say like the world limits to our senses. It is beyond that. So now let's talk about the another limitation, which is short term memory, forgetting what we saw after a while. So memory can fade or change, and even eyewitness accounts can be unreliable many a times. So it means because of these limitations, we need for another means of knowledge too, right? For example, when we see something, then we start making anumans as well. So anuman or the inference fills in the gap that is created during the Pratyakshya Pramana. Pratyakshya Pramana, if I see there is a smoke over there, right? So now I can make anuman, the smoke has come because there is fire somewhere. I am making out inferences, I am making anuman. So anuman is there to fill in the gap. Also, when I cannot see something, I cannot do something on my own, I cannot make anumans too. I have to rely on testimony of the trustworthy or credible sources, which is called a shabd. They provide the reliable information. For example, Newton talked about action and reaction are equal and opposite. We talked about the different laws of motion. So everything we cannot do on our own, something that we can do that is perfectly fine. We can test it, we can experiment it. But there are a number of things, number of theories and principles they have been given by the scientists that we cannot do it. Then what do? Is we rely on the credible source, like who is the person who is giving that information to us. For this, we will be talking about in detail in that very video that will be dedicated to testimony or shabd. So now logical reasoning complements the direct perception. So whenever we see something, we apply logics to some extent. It's not like that whatever we see, we do believe in. So we use our intellect too. So this is how we require the other means of knowledge too, that is other pramanas as well. So Pratyakshya Praman in Indian philosophy or Indian epistemology, right? So first of all, we're going to talk about the Nyaya philosophy. It accepts Pratyaksha as the most reliable source of knowledge because it emphasizes logic and reasoning, and it divides perception into nirvikalp and sarvikalp. This we have already talked about in detail. Now, talking about Vedanta, it uses perception, but it also emphasizes spiritual wisdom too. Spiritual wisdom which goes beyond the senses to self-realization, right? So like there are many things which cannot be fully grasped by the senses alone. Now, talking about the Buddhism, it considers a direct perception as vital. It acknowledges mind-based experiences too, that we talked about internal Prataksha Pramana, and it divides perception into external and internal. This is what we talked about, the different types of Pramana: internal, external, nirvikalpa, and cervical. So, my dear educators, if we would like to conclude this Prataksha Pramana, first of all, let's take an example. The child identifying colors, perception, it happens in the early learning, foundational stage. The child sees different colors, learns the name of the colors, and then associates the colors with the objects, right? So, scientific if we talk about scientists conducting experiments, they observe the chemical reactions, they record the direct observations, and even uses their senses to validate their finding. And talking about the philosophers, they exploring the truth, they reflect on direct experience, they analyze the beyond perception, seeks deeper understanding, and even you see, critical thinking refines knowledge, because we do not blindly believe on what do we see. We use logics as well. So we draw inferences and logic. It adds depth to what we see with our own eyes. That's what we say, prataksh ko praman ki avashyakta nahi. So understanding makes knowledge complete. So my dear educators, how you can use this Prataksha Pramana in your classes? We believe in learning by doing. We engage our students in various hands-on activities, experiments, demonstrations. So whatever is feasible, the real life experiences to be given, the experiential learning, even through various arts integration activities, we try to engage our students, and this is going to be really beneficial way, the strategy if we'll be using in our classes to enhance our students' learning. So my dear educators, if you really appreciate my initiative of exploring, even sharing this information with you, do like, subscribe, and share my channel, and share these videos in your community too. And again, I would request you share your valuable feedback and even the topics that you want me to take in the upcoming videos in the comment section. Till then, goodbye, see you in the next video. Have a nice day.